Please be seated. Now it's my turn to speak. Three sons left home, went out on their own and prospered. Getting back together, they discussed the gifts that they were able to give to their elderly mother, to say thank you for all the work, many years of hard work raising them. The first said, I built a big house for our mother. The second said, I sent her a Mercedes-Benz with a driver. The third said, I bought her a Sony entertainment center. And the fourth son said, I did better than all of you. You know how mom enjoys reading the Tanakh? And you know that you can't see very well anymore. While I sent her a brown parrot that can recite the entire Tanakh, verse by verse. It took 20 rabbis 12 years to teach it. And I had to pledge and contribute $1,000 a year for 20 years. But it was worth it. Mom just has to say the chapter and verse on the book, and the parrot will recite it for her. Soon thereafter, the elderly woman sent her sons letters of thank you. She wrote to the first son, Milton, the house that you bought me is so huge. I only live in one room, but I have to clean the entire house. She wrote to the second son, Marvin. She said, I'm too old to travel. I hardly go out. I like to stay at home. And on the odd occasion that I did use a Mercedes-Benz, the driver was so rude to me. The third son, she wrote, Max, my darling, thank you for the entertainment center. But I'm hard of hearing and I can't really see very well, so I didn't use it very much. And to the fourth son, she said, my dearest Melvin, you were the only son that really thought hard about the gift, to send you an appropriate gift. Thank you so much. The chicken was delicious. Life is largely about perception, and unfortunately we are often guilty of making assumptions based on false observations. The brothers in our story had good intentions. They wished to demonstrate their gratitude to their mother for all that she did for them, to make them the success that they were, by giving her gifts. Unfortunately, the first three sons based their choice of gift on their own desires. Thus, Milton thought that his mother would want a large house, not realizing that one small bedroomed flat would be adequate for a woman of her age. Marvin enjoyed driving a car, a fancy car, and believed that his mother would love being driven in a Mercedes-Benz, even thinking that she was too frail to go out and preferred to stay in. Max enjoyed listening to music and watching movies, so naturally he thought that his mother would be thrilled with the new entertainment center. He too did not consider the fact that she was hard of hearing and could not see very well. Of all the brothers, Melvin was the only one who gave his gift some thought. Unfortunately for the parrot, he also did not take his mother's failing eyesight and deafness into account. While the mother of the four boys appreciated her son's gift, she clearly did not perceive them the same way as her sons did. The $4 million mansion was far too extravagant for her simple needs. The chauffeur-driven car was an unnecessary luxury, and the tiny entertainment center was of no use to her. She really valued the parrot, however, even if she perceived it as a rather small chicken. It fulfilled her need for a nourishing meal, and she derived an enjoyable benefit from it. Now, the obvious theme of the Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, is that of teshuvah, of repentance. An underlying motif of this season in the Jewish calendar is the perception we have of ourselves and of others, and how we think others view us. We are all guilty of making erroneous assumptions about others, about how we are perceived by those with whom we interact. In our modern technological age, we often do not take time to converse meaningfully with each other, and therefore lack the profound knowledge and understanding of the needs, insecurities, and aspirations of those we attempt to assist. 21st century life can often be daunting and unfriendly, and we often feel alone and racked with self-doubt. This unflattering perception of the self is dangerous and leads to spiritual inertia. We feel worthless and therefore cease to strive for perfection. The danger of lack of belief in one's ability is illustrated by the biblical narrative of the 12 spies sent by Moses to scout the land of Israel in order to determine how to go about conquering it. 10 of the spies succumbed to their slave mentality of self-doubt and low self-esteem. They report that while the land of Israel was indeed fertile and flowing with milk and honey, as promised by God, the inhabitants of the land were giants, and the cities were fortified to the heavens. Worse than the clear exaggeration of the size and strength of the Canaanites and their cities is a statement, "We saw the Nephilim there, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them." Rabbi Moshe condemned the 10 spies for assuming that the Nephilim perceived them as grasshoppers. It is bad enough that we often doubt our abilities, but it is far worse to validate our lack of self-belief by extending it to the perception that others have of us. The 10 spies were so convinced of their inadequacies that they persuaded themselves and their fellow Israelites that the inhabitants of Canaan saw them in the same light. This conviction denied the fundamental tenet of Torah, that all human beings are created b'tselem Elohim, in the divine image. We all have the potential to do great things. We all have a spark of the divine. When beset by insecurity or self-doubt, we should remember that we are just as much a part of God as the person or people with whom we are comparing ourselves. Similarly, when we view the other through the lens of self-importance and superiority, it behooves us to remember that they are also God's creation. The danger of perceiving the other as less than oneself is demonstrated by the narrative of Moshe, Aaron, and the water-bearing rock. After the death of Miriam, the Israelites complained to Moses about the lack of water. God instructed Moses to assemble the people before a certain rock and to instruct the boulder to produce water. But Moses, disgruntled with the insistent grumbling of the Israelites, gives them a verbal lashing, shouting, "Shimuna hamorim, hamin hasela hazeh notzi lachem mayim?" Listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of the rock? Then the great leader struck the rock twice with his rod, bringing forth copious water. Both Moses and his brother Aaron are punished for their outburst by being prevented from entering the land of Israel. God says to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them." Some commentators interpret the reason for the harsh treatment to be the brothers' lack of humility. And they said, shall we get water from you out of this rock? Not God, but we. Other commentators understand Moses and Aaron's transgression to be their inability to control their temper. But perhaps their sin was calling the Israelites morim, rebels. In his anger, Moses labeled the people he was meant to lead into the promised land as rebels, when they were simply asking for water, without which they could hardly survive. Moses betrayed his perception of the people he was meant to lead into the land promised by God as nothing more than troublesome insurgents. His perception of his followers, even if it was in anger, revealed that he was no longer fit to lead the Israelites into the land of Israel. The exercise of cheshbon nefesh, of taking account of the soul, which you are meant to undertake during the 10 days of repentance from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, can only be successfully and sincerely done if we have a healthy view of ourselves and our fellow human beings. If we think too little of ourselves, we will not be able to forgive our many shortcomings and failings during the past year. We will not be able to improve and grow during the year ahead. It is for this reason that our sages advise us to remember that God created the world for our own sake. Similarly, if we perceive others as nothing more than grasshoppers, we will never be able to be patient and understanding, forgiving them for their mistakes and their faults. The avoidance of physical pleasures on Yom Kippur is to awaken us to our spiritual selves and to sensitize ourselves to the feelings and needs of others. Yom Kippur enables us to lay aside the distractions and pressures of our everyday lives, to take time out to listen to the Kol Damama Daka, the still small voice of the Creator, which calls us to see the divine in the world. A heightened sense of awareness of the other, if recognized, heeded, and embraced, will assist us during the coming year to listen to and answer the needs of those we wish to acknowledge and support. I pray that each and every one of you will use this Yom Kippur to focus within and to recognize the divine within yourselves and understand the responsibility that is attached to this realization. When we perceive both ourselves and others as potential manifestations of God, can truly work for Tikkun Olam B'Malchut Shaddai, the betterment of the world under the sovereignty of the nurturing God. I wish you Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed for a good year, a year of blessing, of health, of fulfillment, and of happiness. We continue on page 116, 117 with the Aleinu. And I'll call up Mark and Paula Cohen to come and open the ark, and Hedy to come and read, please.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, מושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו בגופי מרמים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. יאי ני 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 יאי ני 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 ני.
Page 119.
May the time not be distant, our God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when lies and bigotry shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. So may all, created in your image, become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your dominion be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever.
Shema Ushema, Ushema Echad.
So later today, Day of Yom Kippur, we will remember and honor our loved ones who have entered eternity during the Yizkor service tomorrow afternoon. But we think of them now as well, as you recite the Kaddish, Tom the Orphan's Kaddish on page 122. We think of them fondly during this Yom Kippur, and think of how they taught us to love our family, to love our friends, to love the world we live on, and to love God. And we follow the example that they set as we remember them now. Yitkadav v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'amad v'rach yutei v'amich malchutei, b'chai echon of yomei echon, v'chayei d'cho beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kariv v'meru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam omer omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh, v'yithada v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'krisha brichu, le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran be'amad v'meru, Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min Shemaya, Achayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru, Amen. Oseh hashalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'meru, Amen. May omnipresent God source of comfort and strength and courage to all who grieve and to all who experience loss, and let us say, Amen. May be seated on the announcement.
A hearty welcome to you all on this cold and wet night. It's wonderful to have you with us. I know many people moved to online due to the weather, so thanks for being with us. A huge thank you to Rabbi Malcolm and Scott for an outstanding service full of meaning and spirituality. Thanks to both of you. And I also want to thank Lynette, our chair of Weinberg, for an outstanding appeal, and to all our volunteers building up to today outside, and Joshua on our sound system, who's done an amazing job, and the many others who've contributed to the High Holy Days. Our service begins at 9:30 tomorrow morning with services, shiurim, interesting discussions running throughout the day until the end of the fast at 7:22 p.m. The Yizkor service is at 5 p.m. tomorrow. There are more details in the schedule, which you can find online or on the notice board in the foyer, noting that there are children's services running the whole of Yom Kippur, for which we are very grateful to Mel Beswick and her team. Please don't forget to support our annual High Holy Day Tzedakah project, which is with Mama Flow, an NGO in the city. Erev Sukkot is in all three centers this coming Shabbat. There will be one very special one here in Weinberg with our Chesed musicians, which will be followed by a brocha. The Sukkot morning service will be in the West Coast on Saturday morning, and will also be followed by a meal. Simchat Torah is on Shabbat of the following week, and there will be a unity service in Greenpoint. So lots on the go. There are posters on the notice boards in the foyer and online for more details on all of these services and events. I just want to add my request to support our appeal. You know, people tend to say, well, leave it to someone else to do. We can all contribute in some way. So, as you know, times are tough out there. Our shul's feeling it as well. So both for the sustainability, but also for the growth, I want to appeal to all of you to play your part to supporting our shul. I wish you all a Gemar Tovah, Chatimah Tovah, and a safe and meaningful fast. When you leave, please remember to thank our amazing security guards outside for keeping us safe. Shana Tovah.
We've been standing in the rain and getting wet to make sure that you're safe. So I think thank you would be appropriate. Before we conclude with Adon Olam, we traditionally recite Psalm 27 throughout the period from Rosh Chodesh Elul right through until Simchat Torah. And the reason for that, given by the rabbis, is the first verse on page 124. It reads, Adonai ori v'ish'i mimi ira, Adonai ma'oz chayai mimi echad. God is my light and my refuge, secure, who shall I fear? God is the stronghold of my life, of whom shall I be afraid? The rabbis say that God is our light, our or on Rosh Hashanah, and God is our refuge, Yishi, on Yom Kippur. And then further down, verse 6, which isn't on this page, talks about God's sukkah, God's shelter. Of course, that reminds us of Sukkot. So that's why we recite this throughout the period. And you're going to sing, Scott's going to lead us in singing the second paragraph there, which is from the same psalm, Psalm 27.
Shifting bebeit Adonai, kol yemei chayai, lachazot benoam Adonai, ulevaker beheikalo, lachazot benoam Adonai, ulevaker beheikalo.
Just one thing I've asked of God, only this do I seek, to dwell in God's house all the days of my life, to behold divine sweetness and beauty, and to gaze in delight at God's temple. Adon Olam, page 126.
I just want to say something about this tune. You may recognize it because I've sung it before here, but it's not traditional. This tune sort of arrived in my head one night in a vineyard after doing things that I probably shouldn't be talking about on Yom Kippur. But it was a tune that arrived in my life at a time that I needed it to arrive, which for me makes it significant to bring it to Yom Kippur because of what we've been speaking about. But it's not that complicated. It's quite easy to pick up. It goes like this. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levato yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yeh b'tifara Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'hu echad ve'sheni lehamshil lo lechachmira b'li reshit b'li taklit ve'lo ha'oz ve'hamizra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'hu eli v'chai go'ani v'tzur kevli be'et tzara ve'hu nisi umanos li menakosi ve'yom ekra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra biyado avkid ruchi be'et ishan ve'ayira ve'im ruchi geviyati Adonai li ve'lo ira Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leit nasa v'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra.
Gemar Chatma Tova, and thank you to Scott for being our Chazan this evening. Great to work with you once more, and travel back safely. I won't see you before you go back, so travel back safely.
Thanks for having me.
Shana Tova, everybody.